encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network.
You know what time it is, no matter where you've been. So let's do it again. Listen up and let the sun shine in. We've got soul training. Time to practice what you preach. Ooh, yeah. Yes, we do. We've got soul training.
And here's Daniel, Alan, and Joe.
I know we're not supposed to date, and talk about when we're recording and those things, so I'm not going to. But I will say that it's mid-afternoon, kind of, for us. And I had another good lunch today. But at lunch, I learned something that we need to pay attention to in terms of context. That's what we're going to talk about. But that is that, did you know beet powder mixed with water improves blood flow and circulation, which increases your brain power? Beet powder. Yeah, that's true. And how I know this is one of our dear listeners is very astute when it comes to functional medicine. And should have started with that first. So I'm getting tuned into these things a little more the older I get. But this dear listener is very positive, and she just wanted to be nice to us. And she said last time I talked to her, not at lunch today, about beet powder, but she just said that she appreciates everything that Soul Training does. She said she watches or listens to a lot of our episodes, sometimes on repeat, passes them on to people that she sees, patients she works with. So if you ever, if you want to give up, remember why you started, Joe and Daniel and me. If you get like, man, this is just an endurance. This is a long run. Just remember that we can't quit because we have people who are being helped by what we're trying to do. So, and that, you can also enjoy some beet powder and water while you listen to Soul Training.
That does sound delicious.
Yeah,
some beet powder, huh? I was just thinking, your conversations with your friends are a lot different than my conversations with my friends.
Really? What's the
never had beet powder brought up.
It's my age. I talk about wearing dark blue jeans and white New Balance shoes when I mow the yard, and it's kind of the older, I'm getting older kind of thing. Hawaiian shirts, stuff like that.
I like a Hawaiian shirt.
I do too.
Nothing wrong with that.
I do too. And with that being said, with context, we're going to talk about something that Joe talked about a few minutes ago that, we can't.
Well, before we recorded.
The
people didn't hear that part.
I'm sorry. You're right. They didn't. I shouldn't assume. But that we are not equipped, nor do we try to solve the world's problems, but we do try to prompt thoughts and provoke some brain activity in a lot of different ways. And that's one that we're going to do today. We're going to talk about situational, how did you say it, Joe?
Kind of situational ethics. Is a sin always a sin? That sort of thing.
You mean, and I guess an example, like years ago, I used to go to a lot of traffic school, which meant I got pulled over a lot by the police, and I always told the truth, but maybe a situational ethic definition would be like if the police officer walks up beside you and asks for your license, and maybe they ask, do you have your license? Do you have a license? And the answer is yes, but no. It's not with me, but I do have a license, kind of thing. So, you mean that's kind of like situational ethics, kind of?
Like you're playing word games with
them? Semantics, trying to, what do they call it? Word judo or something like that?
Maybe. I mean, in that instance, I would say, yes, you do have a license to drive, but you don't have proof of it. But I'm thinking more of, like the old adage of, would you steal to feed your starving family? Something like that, right?
Sure.
That's kind of a situational ethics thing. Or we know lying's wrong, but if you save someone's life by lying in a situation, would that be a good thing? That's the sort of stuff we're thinking about.
How would
today.
you do that? I mean, what's your scenario?
A gunman knocks on the door and says, hey, you're all right, I'm not going to harm you. Is anybody else in the room? I'm going to shoot them. And if I said, no one else is in here, I would be lying because you guys are in here, but in turn would have saved your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or like the classic real-life example is if Nazi soldiers knock on the door and say, are there any Jews hiding in here? And you're hiding some under your floorboard. And if you're honest, completely forthcoming and say, well, yeah, I've got 3 hidden under the floor here. I really don't want you to kill them, though. Would that be okay? He's obviously going to come in and kill them.
Right. So, and there's biblical examples of these sorts of things. That's what we're going to dive into today. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't know that we're going to solve any of the world's great problems, but what we're hoping to do is to get our audience thinking.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's helpful with that is, yes, a sin is always a sin. Let's just go ahead and be upfront about that. But the same action may not always be sinful depending on the circumstances of that action. For example, I think what you need is clear definitions. Murder is always wrong, but not all killing is murder. And that was one of the things that some of the older translations of the Ten Commandments would say, thou shalt not kill. Some newer translations are clearer, saying thou shalt not murder. The two are different. There are times when killing is authorized and even commanded. I think you can make a strong argument that you could kill in self-defense, and that will not be murder. There are definitely times when God instructed his people to execute. Capital punishment was a part of the same old law that said thou shalt not murder.
Well, just looking at the plagues, God killed.
God killed, that's right. There were times when he ordered military action that involved killing, and in fact was angry when people that he had instructed to be killed had not been killed. Why did you not?
Why did you plunder?
Yeah.
And not kill, as I told you to, or to destroy, or as he had told them to.
Exactly. And you could say, well, that's all under the old law, which is pertinent right now because we're talking about that commandment, thou shalt not murder, yet these other examples of killing were acceptable. So the act of killing itself wasn't necessarily wrong. The act of committing murder was wrong. Does that make sense?
It's for justice. God did it for justice to show people how serious he was and is about what he's asked or directs people to do, how the seriousness of it. It's justice.
Well, so what I kind of think we ought to do, and tell me if you have a different opinion, is maybe mention some of these scenarios in the Bible that present kind of a moral quandary for us, and then talk about some different ways people have tried to create solutions for those.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
So are we recording now? Or?
We've been recording.
No, I'm joking. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, we're recording.
I'm just messing with you. We've never been so formal in the pregame. I was just joking. I know we're recording. Calm down.
We're going to let you do that intro for the third time.
Yeah, go ahead. Just run it back again.
No. All right, Daniel, you had the plan. Let's hear what you got.
Okay, so for example, the Hebrew midwives, right? There was a time when this is when Israel was under Egyptian captivity, and Pharaoh was getting a little nervous about how big and strong the Israelite nation is becoming, and so he instructs that all the baby boys are supposed to be killed. Well, the Hebrew midwives don't want to do that, so what they keep doing is they are lying to the authorities and saying, well, these Hebrew women are just so strong, they've already delivered their babies and hidden them by the time we get there. Well, that's a blatant lie. That's not the case at all. But they have done that in order to protect the lives of those babies. So, were they justified in that or not? Another example, very similar to the Nazi example, but is with Rahab. Rahab is living in Jericho at the time the Israelites are about to conquer that. And she has these 2 Israelite spies that she's hiding in her home. The authorities come looking for them. She hides them and says, they're not here. They snuck out a different way. And so you have some examples like that.
But yeah. Why do we make of that, though? Because Rahab, well, she was a hero in the Old Testament when this happened.
Yeah.
But she's mentioned again in Hebrews 11, the Hall of Fame of Faith, and praised for it, as she should be, but she was dishonest.
Right. So she did an act of faith, and was dishonest. Some might call it a lie, depending on how we're going to define lying, but she definitely was dishonest in the process of her act of faith. The Hebrew midwives, the same way. They were dishonest in their act of faith, and they received praise from God, but how do you deal with that? And we'll talk about some ways people have tried to deal with that, but it's something people wrestle with, and people come up with awkward. It's an awkward tension. It's hard for us to figure out why were they praised for this? There was a greater good that they were doing, but they did something in the process that we normally would think of as being not right.
And I tell you what, I can't make much sense out of when is doing something bad good.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make much sense to me. But I do know one key to getting there is seeing the bigger picture.
Right.
And not just seeing something for what it is, seeing the forest, not the trees.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm not trying to, I hate that phrase, devil's advocate, but somebody who doesn't, we're not on the same page with us, they may go, okay, so now you're saying it's okay to lie for, the kingdom. It's okay to lie for the work. Well, you're talking about with Rahab.
Yeah, so the question there is, what do you do with our obligation toward the truth? And I've heard people say a half-truth is a whole lie, which sounds nice, but that creates some problems as well. Here's one that is really problematic, I think, or at least something to struggle with. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, verses 1 and 2, here the Lord says to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have selected a king for myself among his sons." All right, so here God has told Samuel, Saul's still alive at this point. Samuel's upset because he's turned out to be a terrible king. And God says, I've got this new guy that I want you to go and anoint. And but Samuel says, verse 2, "How can I go? When Saul hears of it, he'll kill me." Then the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord." So there you've got a situation where God directly instructs Samuel, for the purpose of completing this mission, I want you to tell a partial truth. Best case scenario, this is a partial truth. Even if he does take that heifer and he does offer a sacrifice, that is technically true. That's what he's going to do, but that's not why he's going there. He's going there to anoint David. So he's being told, be deceptive about your true purpose here. And so we know God's not going to instruct sin. So this clearly wasn't sinful. So how do we wrestle with that? How do we justify that with our other ethics about truth and lying and deception?
Yeah, that's tough.
Joe?
Well, I'm not a theologian here. I've told you guys, I press record and I just sit back and listen. But that's the sort of thing that I struggle with a little bit. Now, a couple things. One, I've never been told by God to take an animal and go sacrifice. I've never been told by God other than His Word to do anything, so I don't really have to worry about that necessarily. What do you think?
Well, let me give you kind of three camps of argumentation that people fit in. And I'm going to use three different theologians as emblematic representative of those ways of thinking. One is Augustine. And historically, Augustine his position is all lying is sin completely. There's no question about it. And so in a situation like the Nazi at the door, what he would say a person ought to do is you be completely truthful and you just rely on God's providence to intervene, or else it doesn't. You tell the truth no matter what the consequences are. That's what he would say, as I understand it. That's one camp. Another one would be like Thomas Aquinas, and some after him would say that all lies are wrong, but not equally so. Matter of fact, he had kind of three categories of lies. He would say there are those lighter lies that are joking and jesting, and that those are still wrong, but they're lesser. They're not as grievous. They're lesser offenses. So you're getting into some lesser sins and greater sins with this mindset. The middle category of lie, he would say, is those that would be like Rahab did. It's a lie to save a life. It's a lie for some greater good. And so both he and Augustine, I think, would say about Rahab and the Hebrew midwives that their acts of faith were praised by God, but their lies really were sinful. And so God mercifully overlooked their sinful lies because of the greater good there. And then there are the normal types of lies that are the more severe ones. That would be, bearing false witness kind of thing. So that's kind of where he would be at. And then there's a German philosopher, theologian named Bonhoeffer that...
he wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, you're right. So he's going to say that sometimes morally deceptions are not only permissible, sometimes they're actually a moral duty when complete truth-telling would be complicit with evil, when it would be betrayal. So,
but why does he say that? What's his circumstance? Explain to folks that don't know.
Okay, so he's going to be saying, he's going to be back dealing with Nazi Germany in a more direct way. But, so he's going to say that Rahab, her lie was a righteous lie. And it might not even be fair to call it a lie. It might be a situation like...
Heroic act.
A heroic act, yeah.
Could it almost be like a strategy?
A strategy, yeah. So maybe he might compare that to like murder and killing. Maybe not all acts of deception are in fact lies, just like not all killing is in fact murder. I think he would say there's a bearing false witness, like in the Ten Commandments. It says, "Thou shalt not bear false witness," and that the bearing false witness is kind of that's a harmful, that's an unjust testimony. That's something that's going to hurt somebody else. And that's different from that doesn't condemn. Well, it's not exactly the same whether it condemns or not. It's not exactly the same as all forms of deception. So he would say that her act there of being deceptive was the morally right thing to do, and would say the same thing for the Hebrew midwives and others. So that gets a little closer to this situational idea, not completely in the camp of situational ethics. That's incredibly problematic, and I don't think many Christians would want to embrace a situational ethic kind of thing. But anyway, so those are kind of three different historical positions on how you would deal with Rahab.
Okay. And some of the ones you talked about, those are not little situations either. They're all life or death situations that you've spoken of. And all life or death situations that are that could potentially stop or alter the plans of God. Mm-hmm. So these are not small situations.
No, they're not.
So, because I just flipped the script, think about what happened if Rahab would have been truthful. Think about other situations had God's plan been stopped by someone telling, doing a reveal.
Right, telling everything you know.
Right.
Yeah, and I think everybody, I don't want to say everybody, that's too broad. Many people would grant that some forms of what would be a good way to say it, evasiveness is strategic evasiveness might be there, where you're telling the truth, but you're not telling the whole truth. You're not being completely forthcoming. Your candor might be lacking in some way.
Because if Rahab would have told the truth, then it would have been would history have shown her to be in opposition of God?
Yeah, I mean probably so. Probably so.
Well, let's talk about one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
We've got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Unless you got a lot of notes.
No, you're good.
So that covers, lying, I think.
Yeah.
But earlier, before we started recording, We were talking about killing. We mentioned it a little bit, during wars. Obviously, there's killing during wars. That's not murder.
Mm-hmm.
That's separate.
Right.
Biblically.
Yeah.
But what about Samson? We know suicide is wrong. Samson, whenever he was captured, like his last, I guess everybody's last act that goes the route of suicide is an act of killing.
Mm-hmm.
But his act was purposeful to not only kill himself, but to kill a bunch of other enemies of Philistines too.
Right.
Yet that seems to have been glorified too. So walk me through that a little bit.
Well, a couple of things there. I don't know if it was glorified or not, if it's just recorded as this is what happened. But in any case, do you view what he did as, this is I'm killing myself and I'm just going to take out as many people as I can in the process? Was the purpose to kill himself, or was the purpose to slay these enemies of Israel and he was collateral damage? Was he sacrificing himself, or was it genuinely a suicide? And I think I would argue in his situation it was more of a self-sacrifice, which I think is different than suicide. Otherwise,
yeah, very much.
Yeah, you're going to have, like Jesus himself, right? He was killed, but he makes it plain he's laying down his life. He could have stopped that execution at any moment that he chose to. So in allowing himself...
But aren't we glad he didn't?
Of course, yeah. So in allowing himself to be killed, he's sacrificing. That's not suicide. He's not trying to end his own suffering. He's not. Suicide's a whole different issue, and I don't want to get too deep into that.
That's laying himself out there.
Yeah.
To defeat God's people. That's
exactly.
It's a heroic act.
It's a heroic act. Yeah.
Giving himself up to take a chunk out of the enemy.
Yeah, which also is an illustration of what I was talking about earlier, that there are very few acts. Now, I say very few because none are coming to my mind, but I don't want to be absolute because maybe you can think of one. But there are very few acts that the act themselves is intrinsically wrong. So like killing, we've talked about several situations, even killing yourself, that might be sacrificial. They might be justified in a certain way. Anyway, so the motivation does matter. The circumstances do matter, and a lot of what is wrong is when something is taken out of its proper context. Something is misused. Something is abused.
So what we want to get out of this episode is you should not lie,
no,
or kill, or sin. Sin is sin.
Yes, it is.
Even though there's some examples of someone doing something deceitful that worked out pretty good, we don't want to live our lives that way.
No.
That's not how we need to operate. And, unless you guys have anything else, we can end a little early. It's our show. We can do what we want to.
The only thing I was going to, I didn't mean to cut you.
Go ahead.
Stop the opportunity for us to end early. But two things I did wanted to say is, one, would you, and you may be able to recall it off the top of your head, but Daniel did mention, the murder or suicide and all those things. The older I've gotten, the more through education, through my job, and through situations that have happened in our congregation with suicide. I mean, obviously, it's a very weighty, serious subject and all those things. I mean, that's such a dynamic, just that word is so dynamic and complex.
Heavy, yeah. Because
of, nowadays we've learned so much about trauma, what leads someone, it's like you have an unhealthy heart, or you could have an unhealthy heart, your organ, what I'm talking about, our liver, also our brain. There could have been some damage long ago that causes people not to cognitively be able to function, all those things. So I just wanted to share that we had an episode with, we did a two-parter with a gentleman. He's did a mental health episode. Help me with his name.
Neil Ritchie.
Neil Ritchie. I have to ask you every so often. Neil Ritchie. But both of those episodes we did with him are really good about mental health, and he provides a lot of resources. So if that finds, if this connects with you about mental illness and suicide. I know that we talked about murder and suicide a little bit, and about justification, and the way that all gets twisted so fast. That go back and listen to those episodes. And Neil Ritchie was excellent, provided a lot of resources and all those things too. And the other thing, back to lying, somebody brought something to my attention that a speaker at the Polishing of the Pulpit recently talked about lying, and that I never thought about this, but like you all, there are user agreements.
Yeah.
That you click on setting up a password.
The most widespread lie ever, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how many of us can say, because I just completed a training through my school. Your wife did too, Safe Schools training. Safe Schools, not Safe Ghouls. That's coming up in sometime in the future. But Safe Schools training, and just about every template or every section we had to read or begin, it always began with you had to scroll, and then at the very bottom click I agree or I disagree or I've read this.
Yep.
And I mean it's like a a third century novel.
You'd spend years of your life reading if you actually did read everything that you clicked.
What do you do? I mean, how do you handle that? I mean, and I'm not asking you to solve it. I'm just saying.
I think you need to start reading them. Is what I think.
Yeah, you go first. I'll let you go first.
Maybe we can advocate for I trust instead of I agree or whatever.
Yeah, I have read and
if they would
I trust what you guys are saying.
If they would change the tab at the bottom, but I mean, I never thought about it. I mean, if you're going to drill down, I mean, I never.
Right.
But for me, with what I'm going over now, if we're talking about a contract.
That's not really situational. That's different what we're talking about.
Well, I mean, with lying, but see,
I think that's a valid question. Is that a lie for me to click at the bottom? I have read and accept these terms. If I did not read those thousands of words,
I agree with the terms.
I agree with the second part.
But you're not writing in your answer. You're clicking a box, yes or no.
Yeah, I agree with those terms.
Yeah.
I didn't read them. I agree with them.
But
I'll
checked.
do whatever you ask me to do.
Right.
Yeah. But I didn't read them.
So it's just
I'm not probably ever going to read them. Honestly.
More thought-provoking.
Yeah. So I guess like what you're saying there is, I'm going to accept reality as if I had read this, and so I might as well have, because this is. Whatever these terms are, I'm trusting you enough to know that there's nothing in there I'm going to deeply regret.
And Joe brings out a good point, too. In all seriousness about trust, I think you got to use common sense, and I don't mean to keep going back to the World War II example of the Nazis, but I mean, if somebody were to come in here and, if I'm at the door and use Joe's example, how we let off with, I'm going to protect you two, or hope, and I'm just saying I'm going to keep that door closed. Mm-hmm. I think there's some common sense that has to be involved here. I think you have to have. God gives us the power to reason and understand and filter and those things. And obviously, we're not advocating lying. But there again, I think with a lot of things in 2025, I just told what year we're in now, but I think you got to use some common sense, too, and realize, like with the I read and understand,
Mm-hmm. I think what you've said there is interesting, because if our ethics are such that they need emergency exceptions because of common sense, then maybe our ethics aren't fully developed enough. If a good, proper set of ethics should never have to be violated, and that might be something Bonhoeffer has to offer with his position, is It really ought to be that if my ethics are completely accurate 100%, then there shouldn't be a time when I have to break them, I have to overlook them because of the situation.
Well, but I mean, like Joe's example at the door, though. I mean, if it's going to keep somebody from barging in that moment, how do you? I'm going to use common sense.
Well, which means that your emotion is operating on maybe a different base level of ethics than your intellect acknowledges. You see what I'm saying?
Kinda.
You don't.
I couldn't click the trust and agree button if you gave me one.
Okay.
But
well, we're running out of time anyway. But
yeah, we're running out of time. But hopefully, we at least got our listeners thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're not condoning, don't sin.
Yeah, no.
It's an interesting topic.
Right, and never willingly, knowingly violate your conscience. That's a pretty important principle as well.
I was thinking about Rahab. It was emotional there. I mean,
Yeah, which goes back to the question: did she do the wrong thing for the right reason, or did she do the right thing all the way across the board? Which is, we'll let our dear listener wrestle with that.
Lead them into that.
All right.
Okay. Well, thank you, dear listener, for being a part of this discussion. We'd love to know your take on it. Email us and let us know what you think about it. It's an interesting discussion, I think. We want to thank the elders at the South Green Street Church of Christ for making soul training possible. On behalf of Alan and Joe, I'm Daniel. Until next time, keep soul training.
Soul training. Time to practice what you preach. Ooh, yeah. Yes, we do. We've got soul training.
To learn more, you can email us at soultrainingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can write to us, P.O. Box 503, Glasgow, Kentucky, 42142. That's Soul Training.